Okay, what I'm going to do today, folks, is just to give you a little bit of an overview. It's fantastic to be able to introduce Linguaskill to you. Here at Cambridge Assessment, Linguaskill is one of our key products that we are really investing a lot of time and effort in. It gives me great pleasure to be able to introduce that product to you today. Before I do talk about the details, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. So Cambridge Assessment English, in case you were not aware, is part of the University of Cambridge. So we are actually a department of the university, and we work very, very closely with the university to develop our assessment capability that goes into all of our Cambridge products. And we obviously work with those experts within the university. We have a very broad international reach, as I'm sure you're aware. And what really is important for us is the different cultural differences that we are operating in a global community. And we work very closely with governments, with educational authorities and employers worldwide. We really do have an international perspective. And I think that obviously under the current circumstances, that really is important to us, and we are reaching out broadly across the world every single day under these circumstances, and feel very connected, I think, with all of you as we face the current challenges as a global community. So really, you know, Cambridge is here for you, and it's important that I think that you feel that from us, because we really are all in this together. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, the future and the world and where we all are and where we're all going. And I think that, you know, we've done a lot of research together with our colleagues at the university into what the needs of the world are going to be in the future. And that was before COVID struck us. But, you know, it's clear that the world is changing. And obviously the current situation that we're in may expedite that even further and may make the progression even quicker. But we do know that we have to face the challenges going forward. And the fourth industrial revolution skill set is what I think we've been doing a lot of research into. So what is that? These are a set of skills that a lot of studies have been done. It was started by the World Economic Forum into what the skills of employees of the world of industry will need going forward. So those skills center around collaborate. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. I just go slightly. I went too keen there. You go back up one. Just takes a little bit of time to connect to the screen. So let me just see if I can get the slide back. There we go. So the slide before you shows you what those fourth industrial revolution skills are. So they center around problem solving, collaboration, communication, creative thinking, critical thinking. And it's all about having to collaborate together to build a future. The world is interconnected, as we know, and actually these are the skills that industry is going to need to go forward. The balance between technical and soft skills are changing, and we need those technical skills, but actually these fourth industrial revolution skills are going to be more and more important to us. And obviously communication is right there on your screen, right at the center of that. And I think that here at Cambridge, we really do strongly believe that English in particular, it plays a pivotal role in that. Why? Well, we all know, right? It is the language that we all use to communicate across the globe. It is the lingua franca of business. And there have been lots and lots of studies to show that actually the greater the investment in English at a country level, the greater the investment that comes into that country, because of course it enables any country to reach out to that global community. So I think, you know, English is at the heart of success for everybody. And we at Cambridge really want to enable you to be successful. So how can we do that? Well, I guess one of the key things is that we can use testing and understand how the role of testing can help us to close the English language skills gap. How can it help? Well, it's key for us to understand our requirements. So, you know, as educators, we all know that we need to know what it is we've got to learn, but in order to do that, we need to understand where we are. Okay, so that understanding where that level is and where you want to get to is really important. And that really helps to build confidence in our learners and also in teachers. We need to understand what it is we're trying to achieve. And then that gives us that sense of achievement when we are able to, for example, show progress. And it also enables us to make our teaching relevant and practical. We can really understand the needs of our learners and therefore try to tailor teaching to address the challenges that our learners have got for the future. It helps us to set goals to their needs and really helps us in all round to be greater and more relevant and practical. Now, at Cambridge, we're working, as I said, we're part of the university, and we work very closely with the departments, the Computer Laboratory, the Department of Engineering, and Theoretical and Applied Linguistics. We are part of the Institute for Automated Language Teaching and Assessment. Now, this is a world-leading organisation. I can't underline that enough. I often think that here we are in sleepy little Cambridge, but actually what is happening here is really, really quite cutting edge. The investment and the expertise that we have, we draw absolutely world-leading minds to this little sleepy town and are able to produce great things. And really, ALTA has been at the heart of what we're doing with our AI and adaptive testing capability. Now, the machine learning and AI is really important because it really gives us a different testing experience. It's an adaptive testing experience, and it's, I think, important for us to understand as educators what that means. It means that it can really open up a world where the test is unique to each candidate. So no two candidates are going to have the same testing experience. Why? Because that AI, that machine learning, has got embedded diagnostics which constantly are addressing and by each answer taking the student through and accurately diagnosing their level, accurately, reliably. And those results can be seen at an individual level, but they also can be seen at a group level. And really importantly, they give you those results speedily. They come quickly. And, you know, we all are, I think, now more than ever, living in a world where none of us can wait. And actually the requirements of any organization or any academic institution are to be able to work efficiently. And that speed is really important. It's important for us to keep our internal processes going quickly and efficiently. And I think that our testing solutions can support you and help you to do that. As I've said before, it can also help with personalised learning pathways. It can inform the tutors and the teachers to understand their students' needs more closely. It's personalisation at scale. It means for the first time, we're able to really understand each individual student more in depth, and actually with a huge number of students, that's now possible. And that obviously helps us to run more efficient and more cost-effective organisations, which I know is a pressure in our daily organisations. So that's all from me. I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Ian. Ian works very closely with me and at the team here in Cambridge, and he can help you to give you a much deeper understanding of Linguaskill. So Ian, over to you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Sue, and good afternoon, everybody. It's really a pleasure for me to talk to you today about Linguaskill, which, as Sue mentioned, is a fabulous new product from Cambridge using AI technology to create a really new and innovative testing experience. So, as Sue mentioned, Linguaskill is a fast and accurate online language test, a multi-level test, an adaptive test, and we're going to talk about that in quite a bit of detail, but basically just to tell you, this means that we have a test that can be used with students from a wide range of language proficiency backgrounds. So students who have a very low level and a very high level can take the same test and will get a tailored testing experience with a very fast turnaround of results. And this is very exciting and something that's unique in the market. It's a modular test, which means that you can decide whether you want to take a reading and listening test, or whether you want to add a writing or a speaking component to that. You can choose which modular components you put together to tailor the experience to your needs. And Linguaskill can be used in lots and lots of different ways. Here are some examples of how the test is currently being used in the higher education sector. So you can see that Linguaskill could be used for admissions purposes, so testing students to find that they have the right level before they join a particular course. They can be used as a placement tool so that you can place students on the right level of their English language program. You can also use Linguaskill to show their progress as they go through a course. So you can see maybe halfway through the year, for example, how well they are doing. Are they on track? Also, it's been used widely as a tool for graduation, so an exit test. Many universities set a level of English that they would require their students to achieve before they are able to graduate, and Linguaskill is a brilliant test to use for that purpose. And it can also be used for other purposes, such as setting scholarships and seeing which students can obtain that scholarship, and also to help teachers improve their level of English, especially teachers who are perhaps teaching other subjects through the medium of English. And it's also a test that's been used in the corporate sector as well. Okay, so this particular test has been trialed with speakers all around the world. We've trialed the test on over 40 languages in 50 different countries. And what that means is that we've been able to create a test and test items which really represent the requirements of students from all around the world from different language backgrounds. It's also important for you to note that we spend an awful lot of time trialing all the questions that go into the exam. So every question which appears in a Linguaskill exam has been tested with live candidates in the past. So we know exactly the level of difficulty and how reliable those test items are. And we are constantly reviewing the test to ensure that the test gives you the best experience, the latest test items of the highest quality. Okay, just moving to the next slide. We mentioned that Linguaskill is also a very quick test. And here you can see that the turnaround times are quite amazing. For students who are taking the core test, which is the listening and reading test, the results are available instantly. And that's because, as Sue mentioned, the test is auto-marked, which means that as soon as the candidates respond to an item, the computer is able to mark that item. The writing test is also marked using AI technology. That means that we have AI technology based in Cambridge, and all the results from students' writing tests are sent back to the auto marker here. The auto marker tests them, looking at a number of specific features such as sentence construction, the use of grammar, vocabulary, paragraphing, punctuation, task fulfillment, and then the results are sent back within 4 hours. The speaking test is currently marked by examiners based here in Cambridge, and again, as soon as the speaking tests have been taken by a student, their responses are sent back to Cambridge, they're marked by our examiners, and then they are returned back to you within 48 hours. Actually, we found that the results are available much more quickly than 48 hours. Okay, moving to the next slide. We've also got a brand new results verification service in place. And what this means is that we have an added level of security, because any institution which wants to check the results of a candidate who've taken our exam can go onto our online service, enter a few details from that candidate's test report, and they can check that the results are accurate and that the results are valid. And this is a really important, especially when students are using their results for the purposes of getting a job. Okay, moving to the next slide. Linguaskill, I mentioned, is an online test, and it's very easy to administer. Because it's online, you can determine exactly where and when you want the test to be taken. We have a portal that you can see here called the Cambridge English Test Portal, and this is where our customers log on to order their tests and to access candidate information and results. And it's also the same place where candidates log on to take the test. It is a secure test, and we do require the test to be taken under secure conditions with a proctor or an invigilator, but you can decide on what day, at what time, and also the location where those tests are taken. Okay, moving on to the next slide. I mentioned as well that you get very accurate and detailed reporting with Linguaskill. I'd just like to spend a few minutes looking at the test report form that candidates receive. Sue mentioned that there is an individual and a group report for candidates, and what you can see here is the individual report. So as well as getting some basic information about the candidate who's taken the exam, you can see that you get an average score based on whatever modules you've taken. In this case, the student has taken the listening, reading, and speaking module. And you can see that they get an average score, which is on the Cambridge English scale, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later, as well as a CFR score, and also a bar graph that shows them exactly where they are within that CFR level. That's a great thing about the Cambridge English scale. It breaks each CFR level down into 20 points and gives you a lot more accuracy as to where a candidate is within that level. You can see you also get individual scores for the modules that you've taken, again, with a Cambridge English score, a CFR level, and a bar chart showing you where you are within each of those levels. And you also get some can-do statements. And can-do statements tell you what you are able to do with your language at the level of ability that you've obtained. These are statements which form the basis of the CEFR and give you a lot of detail describing what candidates do when they read, write, speak, and listen to English at particular levels. Okay, moving to the next slide. You also get a group report, and this allows institutions to look at a cohort of students. So if you wanted to compare the results of students in a particular year at university, you would be able to do that through the group report. If you wanted to compare ability year on year, you could also use this report. And if you had students who've taken the test, for example, at the beginning of the year or as a progress test throughout the year, you can also use this group report to compare their proficiency level as they go through their courses. Okay, moving on to the next slide. I mentioned the CEFR, or the Common European Framework of Reference, and these are the levels that you can see on this chart from pre-A1 up to C2. The Common European Framework is used throughout the world, and it compares language ability across a number of European languages. We've also introduced, as I mentioned before, the Cambridge English scale, and you can see that that scale appears next to the CFR on the chart as a list of numbers from 90 all the way up to 230. You can see here that Linguaskill covers a range from pre-A1 all the way up to the C levels of the CFR. I mentioned it's a multi-level test which allows you to test students of all different ability levels. And you can see that Linguaskill compares with the IELTS scores. And if we move on to the next slide, I'd like to talk about that in a little bit more detail. So I know that in your region of the world, many of the students are coming to university with an IELTS score of around 5 or 5.5, and you can see that Linguaskill goes up to 180 on the Cambridge English scale, and so can differentiate between students all the way up to 6.5 on the IELTS score. This means that Linguaskill can be used as a great indicator for IELTS readiness, and it can give students a really detailed understanding of what level of IELTS they may be able to achieve should they take it. Okay, moving on to the next slide. We're often asked about IELTS and Linguaskill and how the exams fit together. So I wanted to put a little chart together just to tell you a little bit about this. So both IELTS and Linguaskill are 4 skills tests. And they take a similar amount of time. Linguaskill is slightly shorter at 2 hours, and IELTS is slightly longer at 2 hours and 45 minutes. Linguaskill's modular, as I mentioned, so you can decide whether you want to do reading, listening, speaking, and writing all together, or you just want to choose some of those modules. And also, Linguaskill is an on-demand test, whereas with IELTS, currently you have to sit for an exam on a particular date. The scoring is slightly different. As I mentioned, you get a band score with IELTS of 1 to 9, whereas with Linguaskill, you get a Cambridge English Scale score and a CFR level. But as we saw on the previous slide, the scores are comparable. And as I mentioned, Linguaskill is a great indicator of your IELTS level of ability. And also you can see that there is a slight difference in the turnaround of results between IELTS and Linguaskill as well, because Linguaskill uses that fantastic AI technology and auto marking technology. The results are available more quickly. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So we currently have 2 versions of Linguaskill that are available. We have a general English and a business English version. The reason why we've got 2 is that we know that there are certain students who will be attending courses, perhaps it could be an arts course or a science course, and they would probably feel more comfortable taking a general English test. So this would be a test which tests their proficiency in a number of general English situations, such as writing essays, talking in lectures, listening to presentations, giving presentations, that sort of thing. And then we also have a business English version, which may well be more attractive to students studying on business courses or economics courses. The 2 courses are the 2 exams are exactly the same in terms of the types of questions that the students answer, but they are different in terms of the context, because one deals with business English. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So we mentioned previously that Linguaskill is a multi-level test, which means the great thing about Linguaskill is that one test is suitable for all candidates of all levels of abilities. And the other thing that we are very proud of at Cambridge is that we make all our exams available to students who may have special needs, students with hearing or sight impairment. We have special versions of the exam suitable for them to take as well. So moving on to the next slide. We mentioned, of course, that Linguaskill uses advanced computer-based testing. Okay, this allows us to create the reading and listening test, which is both adaptive, multi-level, and tailored specifically to the requirements of the student taking the test. And it also allows us to use that great AI technology for creating an auto marker for the writing exam. And it's also something that we're working on in the future for our speaking test as well. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Just to tell you a little bit about each of the exams themselves. I mentioned that there is a core listening and reading test, which takes around 1 hour for students to complete. The test includes questions on grammar and vocabulary as well. So it's a test of listening, reading, grammar, and vocabulary. And we incorporate a range of exclusive question types which really test students' communicative competency. This means that they really have to think before they answer the questions, and these questions really test their ability. Also, as Sue mentioned, the tests are tailored specific to each student. So that means that no 2 students will see the same questions in the same order during the exam. And this has an added level of security, because when 2 students are sitting next to each other in a room taking the exam, it's impossible for them to cheat, because they will both see different questions on the screen. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Here you can see a little bit more about how the auto marker works. So I mentioned that each test is unique and set to the level of the student taking the exam. So you can see on this chart that a candidate will ideally have an initial question, which is somewhere around the A2, B1 level on the CFR. If they get that question right, the next question will be slightly more difficult. If they get that question right, the next question will be a little bit more difficult. And if they get that wrong, the next question will be slightly easier. And the system will go through this process until it determines the right level for the students. This gives the students a fantastic testing experience, because it means that they will only see questions which are close to their level. If you think about other exams, multi-level exams, if it was a paper-based multi-level exam, for example, the students would have to see a number of questions which are either too easy or too difficult for them. But what's great about Linguaskill is that they have that fantastic testing experience that also they're always going to see questions which are challenging but at or near to their level. And this gives them a great tailored testing experience. Okay, moving on to the next slide. There's also a speaking test, and the speaking test takes around 15 minutes to complete. There are 5 sections to the test, and students wear a headset and a microphone, with a microphone, and they respond to prompts that they see on screen. All those prompts are recorded. They're sent back to Cambridge, as I mentioned before. They're marked by our pool of highly experienced examiners, and the results are sent back to you within 48 hours. 48 hours is a maximum. We aim to get the results back much, much quicker. Okay, on to the next slide. So the final component is the writing module, and this takes about 45 minutes to complete. There are 2 sections. Students are asked to create one shorter piece of writing, which will ideally be something like an email, and then a longer piece of writing, an essay or a report. All those responses are typed into the computer. They're sent back to our auto marker in Cambridge. And amazingly, that auto marker is able to get results back within 4 hours. And just like the speaking tests, we've seen that the auto marker can actually work much more quickly than that as well. Okay. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about the range of learning resources that we have available for the Linguaskill test, because at Cambridge it's really important that we have lots of learning resources to back up our assessments so teachers and learners are well prepared for the exam. We've worked with our partners, Cambridge University Press, to create a fantastic course called Empower. It's a very interactive course. It has online components. It has an app that goes with it. These are official learning materials for the Linguaskill test. A lot of the activities use the same testing engine, the same AI intelligence that we've used in the Linguaskill exam, and all the Linguaskill practice activities in this course have been created by Cambridge assessment experts. Okay, moving to the next slide. We've also created an online course to help students prepare for the exam. Currently, we're going to be launching in early June with 20 hours worth of online learning for the listening and reading test. And you can see here that there are different modules covering a range of topics which will be practical and useful for the students to study. They have lots and lots of exam tips, practice in taking the exam, and some unique practice tests for them to take. And then finally, on the next slide, we've also got a quick guide, which is something that students can use if they just want to freshen their knowledge of the exam, maybe the weekend before they're going to take it. Again, it's a very interactive guide. It's 10 hours long. It's got lots of information about the exam. It's very colourful and easy to use. You can also find on our website that we have lots of testimonials from our customers. Here are some testimonials from universities in your region of the world, and you can see that we have some very positive feedback about the exam. Okay, moving on to the next slide. I mentioned that the Linguaskill test is used globally, and you can see here that we've got a range of institutions, range of higher education institutions around the world who use the test. Lots of great corporations who use the test as well, some big companies there, such as lots of airlines like Air Portugal and EVA Airlines in Taiwan, Japan Airlines. Lots of big banks have been using the product, and you can see that it's the official test for the Tokyo Olympics as well. And again, it's also used and trusted by lots of government ministries all around the world. Okay, so I think we've just got one slide left from me, just to say that it's been an absolute pleasure for me to talk to you about Linguaskill today, the newest online multi-level testing product from Cambridge Assessment,